How does a woman go unnoticed for 6 entire years while slowly dying on her own couch, until her body literally becomes part of it? This is one of those stories that sounds like urban legend, the kind you might hear in hushed tones on a late-night forum or stumble across in a Reddit thread, only to dismiss it as made-up horror. But what happened to Gail Laverne Grinds in Florida is disturbingly real. It's a story that blends mental illness, neglect, obesity, and the breakdown of human connection into a tragedy almost too surreal to be true. For 6 years, Gail didn't leave her living room sofa. Not to eat at a table, not to use the bathroom, not to sleep in a bed. Her world became that single piece of furniture. And by the time emergency responders arrived, they discovered something none of them were prepared for. Gail wasn't just sitting on the couch, she was fused to it. In this episode, we dive into the haunting case of Gail Grinds, unpacking how a woman can vanish in plain sight, and how a tragedy this extreme can go unnoticed for so long in modern America. How could someone sit in the same spot for 6 years without anyone stepping in? That's the first question that crawls into your mind like a shadow when you hear the name Gail Laverne Grinds. At just 4 feet 10 inches and once full of life, Gail's story doesn't begin in horror. It begins in pain. A broken leg in the 1990s led to a long recovery, followed tragically by another fracture. For most people, such accidents would lead to rehab, a tough period, and then healing. But for Gail, the second break wasn't just physical. It shattered something inside, and so she stopped moving. She made the couch her refuge. And what's hard to fathom is not just her decision, but how the world around her kept turning as she sat there, unmoving, day after day, year after year, alone. We talk a lot about invisible struggles, depression, trauma, anxiety, but few stories make those struggles so literal as Gail's. She didn't disappear metaphorically. She vanished in plain sight, into the cushions of her own life. She lived in a modest Florida apartment. Her descent into immobility was not dramatic. It was slow. So slow you wouldn't notice it, until you looked back and realized she was gone. Her partner, Herman Thomas, was there. He said he tried to help, said she wouldn't move. But how does someone remain in one spot for 6 years without the world stepping in? How do you eat? Sleep? Go to the bathroom? How does this become your life? And why? Did no one stop it? 6 years. Over 2,000 days. Gail didn't just sit on that sofa. She lived on it. She died on it. Her weight climbed to 34 stone, nearly 500 pounds. Her muscles weakened. Her mobility vanished. Her body became still. And then, slowly, her skin began to fuse with the fabric of the couch. A living person, merging with furniture. It sounds like something from a horror film. But it happened. In real life. And when rescuers came, they couldn't lift her off the couch. Because she wasn't just on it anymore. She was part of it. Herman, her partner, told the media, "I wish I could have pulled her off the couch, but she wouldn't let me." That line hangs heavy. Was it helplessness or apathy? Was it love, twisted into something unrecognizable? Did he feed her? Watch her wither away, day after day, and do nothing? But Herman wasn't the only one. Gail had family, nieces, nephews, people who once relied on her, people who once loved her. And yet, no one raised a loud enough alarm until she was gasping for air, until death was already in the room. How many others are fading behind walls, just like Gail? The emergency call came in too late. When paramedics arrived, what they found would haunt them. The smell was overwhelming. 12 responders worked together, not just to save a life, but to remove her. Not just her body, but the sofa too. A special stretcher had to be built. She couldn't fit in the ambulance. They used a trailer, because the weight of her life And the weight of her death was more than a standard vehicle could carry. She wasn't just stuck. She was entombed in her body, in her silence, in her sorrow. At 3:12 a.m., Gayle was pronounced dead. Still attached to the couch, her body had become her prison, the fabric fused with her flesh. Through years of sores, sweat, and stillness, it wasn't just medical neglect, it was societal abandonment. She wasn't an addict. She wasn't hiding. She was just ignored, falling through every crack we claimed to be watching. And in her silence, we failed her. Neighbors were stunned. One man who lived across the street for 6 years said he didn't even know a woman lived there. All we knew was the old man. In a world of smartphones, constant noise, and 24-hour surveillance, how does someone disappear in their own home? Gayle didn't run. She didn't vanish. She sat in the same spot every single day. And no one noticed. Not really. She became a ghost long before she died. A woman, fading behind blinds, behind silence, behind walls. Once, Gayle had love. After her sister died in 1992, she took in her niece and nephew. She cared. She gave. She tried. So what happened? Did grief swallow her? Did the trauma of physical pain morph into mental illness no one treated? Did she cry out and no one heard? We don't know. And that's the most damning part. We never tried to find out until it was far, far too late. Her story became a mystery because no one stayed long enough to witness her truth. Some blame healthcare, others blame mental health services. Maybe it was poverty or emotional abuse or all of the above. But what this really was a slow-motion tragedy, told in years, not in headlines, not in viral clips, but in the silence between knocks. A welfare check could have changed everything. A neighbor, a cousin, one act of real care, but no one came. And the couch, stained with decay and sorrow, became her bed, her life, and her grave. It's hard to believe this story, not because it's strange, but because it's real, because it's possible, because it happened. Gail Grinds wasn't a monster. She wasn't some twisted anomaly. She was broken physically, emotionally, and eventually spiritually. And no one stopped it. In a world full of noise, not a single voice reached her. Not loud enough, not soon enough. So the question isn't, how could this happen? The real question is, how many Gayles are out there, right now, waiting for someone to notice? Gayle's story isn't just disturbing. It's a mirror, a reflection of what happens when people slip through every crack in the system, until the only thing left is silence. No one heard her scream. No one saw her fade. And by the time the world looked her way, she was already gone. We always say, that could never happen here. But it did, in a quiet town. To a woman no one noticed, until she died stuck to her couch. The real horror isn't how she died. It's how long she was allowed to disappear while still alive. Until next time, stay aware, stay human, and never, ever look away.